Hold on. We have a special guest entering the building. Oh my God, look who it is. Aaron Smith Levin from Growing Up Scientology. Welcome, sir. Welcome back. How you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me back on.
Dude, you're beaming as you should, because I know this has been a long fight. And my first question to you right at the gate is, you just got justice against Scientology. How are you feeling, my man?
Oh, I mean, as someone, the Jane Does are the ones who got the justice and the amazing prosecution team. But, as someone who grew up in Scientology, as someone who knows how much abuse is covered up and swept under the rug in Scientology, I and all my fellow former Scientologists are ecstatic. Could not be happier. I mean, the verdict is one thing, but the details are even another thing. Like being there in the courtroom, seeing how Judge Almeida directly addressed Danny at the end, even mentioning Scientology, even saying things like, "I'm sure you think you're the victim. You're not the victim. You took away their voice. You took away their choice." She mentioned Scientology in her statements. Like, it's been a hell of a roller coaster. So many people were skeptical that this day would ever come, and the fact that it finally came, it's hard to even believe.
Well, guys, I'm so excited. Aaron's here. We're going to go through all the stuff. I have so many questions. So here it is, our interview with Aaron Smith Levin. Welcome back to Popcorn Planet. And yes, we have Aaron Smith Levin here. If you guys don't know who he is, he has an amazing YouTube channel called Growing Up Scientology. I thought I had it here. I'll have it here in a second. But you have been, can you just, for the folks who aren't familiar, give me the two-line. How do you describe yourself to someone who's unaware of what you're doing?
Former Scientologist, former Sea Org member, born and raised in Scientology. I was in Scientology until I was 34 years old. For people, I was in the Sea organization. That's like the most dedicated core of Scientologists who signed the billion-year contracts. There's no like quick nutshell version of my whole story. But my family, my wife's family, destroyed through the process of leaving Scientology. We know how painful the process is, and my channel, Growing Up in Scientology, is pretty much dedicated to helping explain the abusive policies and practices of Scientology in a way that's kind of easy to understand and relatable. And
you were one of a few real channels that was really following this. And you've been on here telling us before. So I know folks who do know you now are excited to see you here, because now we've got this big win against Scientology. All credit to the Jane Does. But yeah, it took a while. It took 2 trials. First one deadlocked, and now this one comes in with 2 charges. He's now seeing a life sentence. I guess, yeah, knowing that Danny Masterson is going to be seeing life in prison, like the reality of that finally setting in. I mean, obviously he's going to appeal, etc., but that seems very unlikely, barring some crazy Alex Murdaugh jury tampering nonsense. Well, one praise, but it seems like this is really going to be a done deal for Danny Masterson. How is that feeling for you?
It feels amazing. And the thing is, Scientology, one of the things that was thoroughly documented in this trial is that in Scientology, and I'll be careful with my words here, okay? Drugging and violently assaulting women, multiple women, does not get you expelled from Scientology. Telling the police that a Scientologist did that to you does get you expelled from Scientology, and harassed and intimidated and stalked and everything. And I think the world really needs to understand that that's how Scientology works. And that policy creates a breeding ground for abuse of children, abuse of women, even abuse of the elderly. And, Scientologists think that they are above what they would call WOG law. WOG is the Scientology word for non-Scientology. If you're a non-Scientologist, you're called a WOG. Scientology believes that they are above WOG law, that they are the most ethical group, the most ethical beings, not only on the planet, but in this sector of the Galactic Confederacy, Galactic Federation.
Galactic Federation, exactly.
And I just honestly think that this trial and the outcome of this trial sends a message to Scientologists: you guys are not above the law, and sends a message to victims of Scientology: justice is available in the WOG world. I think a lot of people out there in the bubble, in the Scientology bubble, don't trust the justice system. Scientology, conditions them to believe it's all been infiltrated by the evil psychiatrists, and it's, I think this sends a message to Scientologists that justice is available in the world outside of Scientology, and you don't have to be afraid of going to law enforcement and seeking justice.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that one of the things I want to bring up is a lot of these full victim impact reports have come online. And one that was really shocking, I mean, they're all very shocking, but there was one part in this one from Jane Doe that names have been released now, Jen B, who basically acknowledges that they had an NDA for her 9-year-old. An NDA for her 9-year-old, and that Marty Singer, crazy, big, powerful Hollywood attorney, was there basically enforcing it against this Jane Doe's 9-year-old, because based on the report and what was said, Danny paid some kid by buying all the candy bars to go say, your mommy wasn't R'd by Danny, prompting the daughter to have to go, mommy, what's R? Like in the car. Like, this is horrifying stuff to get. So like, when people are saying there's no evidence and stuff, like, oh yeah, but how do we know? What is your response when these like reports and things are coming out? Like how are we supposed to ignore this? Is this really like speculative? These reports and things, like, help me.
People who say there's no evidence and he was convicted based purely on testimony have not been paying even the smallest bit of attention to the details of this case. These women did not wait 20 years to come forward. These women came forward to the Scientology authorities pretty much right away. Now, I can understand that people aren't very familiar with the inner workings of Scientology. Everything in Scientology is meticulously documented in writing and cross-documented and cross-reported and cross-referenced in multiple people's files, their auditing files, their ethics files, their personnel files, the organization's data files. The reports, this is actually the big difference between the first trial and the second trial. In the first trial, information was not allowed in about the drugging, and information wasn't allowed in about the Scientology reports. That's what made the second trial different. There are so many reports and dispatches and everything that exist in the Scientology world that were written not only by the Jane Does, but by people associated with Danny. Danny and the Jane Does were interrogated by Scientology to get to the truth of what occurred. Scientology determined that Danny had done what Jane Doe 1 specifically accused him of, and Jane Doe 3. Scientology determined it. It is Scientology's policy of not involving the authorities in anything. That is the reason the authority...
I don't want to interrupt, but I don't want to lose this thought, because that's one of my big questions, I think, for detractors. Like, where's this proof? Like, so this is coming into documents to Scientology. This is documented because apparently, right, Scientology keeps everything. But was this stuff actually released in the court? How do we know this stuff was real?
Great question. In Scientology, the people who write reports keep copies of the reports. And in Scientology, if I write a report on you, I send you a copy. So, and when you do an auditing session, you know, or an interrogation session, your auditor or your interrogator is taking notes in real time. But after the session, they write up an official report and give you a copy of it and send another copy to the ethics officer. So the reports that were used and to be honest, not even all the reports were admitted, because I'll give you an example. Jane Doe 1's mother had written many of the reports. Well, she was never called.
This is the one who wrote Miscavige directly, right? Basically acknowledging it all and saying, my daughter was this. L. Ron Hubbard would never allow this. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes. Believe it or not, the jury never saw those letters.
Really?
The jury never saw those letters because Jane Doe 1's mother is still a Scientologist. And Jane Doe 1's mother said, I want to cooperate in sending Danny Masterson to prison, but not if Scientology is going to get dragged into it. Well, once Scientology got dragged into the case, Jane Doe 1's mother refused to cooperate. And so because they couldn't call her to the stand, they couldn't introduce her evidence because they couldn't get her to verify that she wrote them. So even these letters that we're seeing, the jury didn't even see those letters, but there was some testimony that kind of, you know, hinted at some of its content. But I guess what I'm saying here is the reports that exist and the reports that, like, sitting in the courtroom, we saw these letters, we heard these letters. They were in the opening statements, they were in the closing statements, but that the jury's not present for the opening statements. Wait, the openings, no, it is. Hold on. Okay, there were times when the letters were flashed up on the screen, but the jury was not given the letters to read during the deliberation process, is what I'm trying to, right?
Okay.
So the letters were admitted into evidence, but the jury was not allowed to take those letters and read them during the deliberation. Am I making sense?
So only during the certain testimony parts of the trial was that.
That's
Aren't
right.
they allowed? So it wasn't. I mean, if it's admitted as evidence, don't they get the right to pull any evidence during the deliberations at the end?
No, the judge can withhold the evidence if it didn't actually meet certain evidentiary standards during the examination and cross-examination. So, but I guess I'm talking about two different things here. I'm explaining where the letters came from and their validity and why they exist and who had them and why. But at the same time, I just think it's interesting to note that the jury didn't even get to see all of them. But that's how it works in Scientology. The Jane Does still had copies of the letters. I don't know. I've seen some people online. Oh, this was just based on testimony from 20 years ago. Completely false. Completely false. Also, first of all, testimony is evidence, but it's still a completely false statement. There was even letters written directly to David Miscavige, and David Miscavige even did intervene at one point. Like, there's no question. There was even a $400,000 confidential civil settlement that Scientology helped orchestrate between Danny Masterson and Jane Doe 1.
That's a lot of money to pay for someone who's innocent.
Well, that's right. And Scientology would never allow a Scientologist to, quote unquote, extort another Scientologist without verifying that these claims were actually legitimate. In other words, Scientology was allowing this settlement to take place, even helping to orchestrate it, because they knew that in order to protect themselves, they had to facilitate something that would get Jane Doe 1 to shut up, to sign away, to make her believe that she was signing away her rights to ever speak publicly about this or to ever go to the police.
Well, and one of the most damning things, and I think you can obviously attribute, is you'd think that a religious organization would want to open up their records to show the truth as to what was said because they heard this information and acted upon it, or didn't hear this information, right? The fact is Scientology refused to audit themselves to allow this stuff to come forward, correct? And that's a really weird red flag for me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Scientology, the problem they have is they don't want to set a precedent of opening up their files, because when someone comes along and says, Scientology did X, Y, and Z to me, Scientology wants to be able to say, oh, no, these are protected, priest, penitent, privileged, confidential files. We never release them for any reason whatsoever. So if they release them now for the Danny Masterson stuff, they set a precedent where they can have to release stuff later on, and they don't want that. Scientology also completely denies that they have a policy prohibiting people from going to the police, right? And so, and if they were to open their files up in this case, it would not only confirm that they have such a policy, but that the Jane Does were threatened with having their entire families disconnect from them. They would never see their parents again, their siblings again, if they went to the police. In fact, Jane Doe 1, when she did finally go to the police because she was getting Danny Masterson was not being held accountable. She gave the contact information to the police for Scientology's ethics officer that had been managing her. And the police called that ethics officer. His name's Julian Schwartz. And they said, we've received this report from Jane Doe 1. She gave us your name and your phone number. Anyway, when Julian got off the phone with the police, he called Jane Doe 1. He said, did you give my name and number to the LAPD? And she said, yeah. And he said, can I say the F word on this show right now?
Sure, go ahead. We're deep in the video.
You are so fucked. That's what he said to a victim of SA who had just reported to the police. You are so fucked. I mean, Scientology is so filthy dirty in how they cover up crimes and obstruct justice that they would never open up their files because there's so much of that.
Yeah, I memean, there's so much uncovered. I mean, yeah, there's so much that you've uncovered and others that have come out of the religion, the cult, whatever you want to call it. That just it's very easy to believe all this. What I want to talk also about is now everyone's talking about the backlash of Ashton Kutcher, Mila Kunis, and all the celebrities and they wrote the letter. Do they deserve this cancellation? Do you think they're being canceled? What are your thoughts on this? Is this something that's salvageable?
So personally, I'm a little more sympathetic to Mila because she's been in a sexually abusive environment since she was barely a teenager. I'm just, and things become normalized to people who are in situations like that. I'm sympathetic to her. I don't have my sights set on her. I think everything that's happening to Ashton couldn't happen to a better guy. I mean, there's a lot of dirt there. There's a lot of dirt there. And for him to have this nonprofit Thorn, I'm about to do a video on Thorn. I think in 2021 they raised like 18 or 19 million dollars. 14 million of those dollars went to paying employees. What? Are you kidding me? What? So this whole thing is just like smoke and mirrors to look like he's some sort of advocate. It looks like it's really just a vehicle to pay his friends and his family with tax exempt dollars.
Well, and also probably pay up for, all that stuff I did as a kid or whatever. Maybe this will make up for it, is what it feels like to me in a way that he's trying to justify it.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Final thoughts overall. Are you annoyed that this has become the distraction, or do you think this was a needed distraction? I mean, Danny's in prison now. That's going to go. He got what he got. Are you happy that others are getting sort of exposed for this? What are your thoughts?
I'm not annoyed. I mean, it would have been nice if the Jane Does had a little bit more time to just, relish their victory instead of was it the very next morning? Or was it the very next morning the letters were published? It was going to happen eventually. Now that it's happened, I think it's for the best. It would have been nice if the victory itself wasn't immediately overshadowed with Ashton Kutcher. But, what you going to do?
I mean, it's sad, though, that I think made the victory louder. Like, I could see where they're coming from, but at a certain point, like, the media cares more about bashing these two than ever celebrating wins for victims. The media sucks. So in a weird way, I do think this made the story that much bigger, which ultimately shined the spotlight on the issues, which I'm glad the spotlight's on. So thank you for all those spotlights you've shined on this. Any final things or things you want out there for people to know about this case or moving forward?
No, that's pretty much it. It's just
they can find you on Growing Up Scientology. He does a lot of great stuff over there. Always a pleasure. Come back anytime. And yeah, let's keep talking. Let's keep looking into the Thorn one. We've been looking into that too. As I was talking to you, there's a lot of dirt coming in, and I don't want to just keep digging in dirt, but there is a part of me. It's like you did this, Ashton. Like if he hadn't made the video and tried to play cool, like I don't think this would have been such a big problem. But he's now opened it up. It's all fair fire, I think, at this point. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Guys, make sure you follow Aaron. Aaron, always a pleasure. Thank you for being here. If you guys aren't watching on the replay, hit that subscribe button to both Growing Up Scientology and Popcorn Planet. Hit the bell for alerts, smash the like button, and leave a comment down below. Now, guys, Aaron and I also taped another video that will be dropping tomorrow where Aaron gets into more depth about Ashton Kutcher. Is he a Scientologist? How much did he know? Are they still friends? This one gets juicy, so stay tuned for that one. It was a great conversation. We are still live, but thank you, Aaron, so much. Appreciate you, brother. Let me know if you need anything, and yes, let's have you back soon.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
I'm not sure that I know how to leave.
He'll figure it out. While he figures that out, you guys figure out how to hit the subscribe button, the bell, all those alerts. You know how to do it. All this stuff. Click it.